Hey folks, welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend and welcome to the second half of our semester, or the last two-ish weeks of our semester. So first off, I wanted to congratulate you on all of your hard work so far. I'm really looking forward to reading your midterm exams and getting the chance to talk about your spoken word performances, which were excellent, and I really enjoyed talking with you and workshopping those performances together, and I'm really looking forward to our upcoming workshops and working on your multi-text performances. I hope that you feel like you built something cool, and I hope that you feel like the exam was an interesting opportunity for you to reflect and think through the choices that you made and the choices that your peers made in their own performances and what you learned from them. I hope you didn't find the exam too excruciating. I'm really looking forward to reading your exams. I will have those back to you by this coming Monday. And I also am looking forward to talking about your spoken word performances, so I'll post another video response like I did last time to your performances by Thursday, and I also am hoping to have your graded performances back by then as well. And then the next thing that we have coming up is multi-text performances, which I think that a lot of people are going to find really enjoyable, because I had conversations with a lot of you that were like, can I incorporate music? And this is your opportunity to do things like that, to really draw on your own skills or your own interests as a performer and bring them to the table and see what you can do with them. So I'm thinking that a lot of people are, again, going to really like this project, and I'm looking forward to talking it through. So that's going to be what we do in this first video here. We're going to talk through your multi-text performance projects, and then in the next video, we're going to talk through Butler and Bornstein. We might talk about them in one lecture. It might be broken up into two lectures. And we'll see how long it takes us to get through that material. But again, I think that that is really interesting material that you read today, and I hope that you found it engaging as well. And I'm looking forward to chatting about that. So though, let's get started by talking about your multi-text performances. And again, this will be the first video that I post, and the next video or two videos will be our content videos for the day. So if you want to pull up the multi-text performance handout, that is now under assignment prompts on Sakai, and we'll just go through it really quickly. All right, so for your multi-text performances, you're going to continue to engage with the question of how social and political categories in society are things that we perform every day. So we've been talking about this so far along the lines of race primarily, how people perform racial prejudice, how the differences between racial groups are performed in a variety of ways, and how we can use performance as a means of interrogating racism, or of being anti-racist, or attempting to deconstruct or problematize the categories of race or racial biases. Today, in our lecture, we're going to be talking about gender performance, which is something I think we've touched on, but isn't something we've talked about specifically yet. Excuse me. And so we'll talk about gender performances, though, in a lot of the same ways that we talked about race, as something that has been constructed as normal, largely through scientific discourses, but actually is a social and political construct that has power built into the way that it's constructed. So in your multi-text performances, you're going to be exploring these ideas that you've been exploring so far, and you're going to think about what the possibilities might be for performing these things otherwise. What is a possible alternative to the ways in which we have been encoded to enact gender, or called to enact gender, or called to enact race. So these are the kinds of questions that you're going to be talking about. And the idea here is that you are going to engage your performance as a place to put multiple texts together, which is how we are saying multi-text performances. So you want to think about this as you're taking a poem, in this case, maybe the poem you've been working on, or maybe a new poem, and you're putting it in conversation with other texts or texts of your choosing. So this could be dance, this could be music, this could be video images. All of these things are accessible to you, and it's up to you to be as experimental or creative with how you put these things together as you want. So those are the main themes you want to explore. So the actual like substantive requirement or the catalyst for the performance is to create a 3 to 5 minute, what we're saying, multi-text performance about performing gender and or race. That's based on one of the poems from Resisting Arrest or Salt, or any of the poems that we've discussed so far, or that I've assigned to you so far would also be fine for this, as I said for the last one as well. And as usual, if you're like, there is a poem I must perform that we have not read, please email me and I would be happy to approve that if you wanted to do that instead. But in any case, you are going to select one poem. And as it says here, this could be the poem that you've been performing so far, or it could be from Salt or from a new selection. So you're welcome to stay with what you've been working and build on it so far, or what you've been working on so far and build on it, or you're welcome to take a new poem and work through that. But in either case, what you're going to be asked to do is build a multi-textual experience by incorporating at least one additional text as your supplementary score, something that is verbal, oral or written, or physical, a pattern series of movements, or visual, a series of pattern visual actions with objects or images. So again, the way that that's described is not meant to be confusing. It's just saying that you could, as your supplementary score or as your other text, select an additional written thing, so an oral or written text, so you could blend it with another poem or with a short story or with a monologue from a play. You could put it in conversation with something that is written, or you could put it in conversation with something that is physical, so perhaps dance, some kind of choreography, or you could act things out. So a pattern series of movements is meant to say that you are engaging with physical motion in order to, as your score. So it has to be something relatively elaborate, so a series of movements. So you have to have it thought out or choreographed, but it could be, it doesn't have to be dance necessarily. It could be that you are literally enacting some sort of scene of action or something like that. And then finally, you could do something visual. That is, you could use pictures if you wanted to, a slideshow, or you could use a video or something like that. So you could use a visual image in that way. Something that is not listed here, but is probably under verbal, is that you could also use audio text. So music here is fine with me. If you want to perform the music or use the music as some kind of backing, that is totally okay. So any one of those additional supplementary texts is totally fine with me. So the idea then is that you're going to take your poem that you've selected, which again can be what you've been working on so far, or it can be a new poem that you've selected to talk about either race or gender. And from that, you're going to take another text that you think resonates, complements, or in some way can be productively put into conversation with the first text, and you're going to perform these things together. You're going to perform these things together. You are also welcome, if you would like to move beyond just using two texts. You can use visual images and music if you want to as well. So that is the main requirement. Those are the main requirements, or the main instructions for how you should think about proceeding. The performance, again, is going to be based in a poem, but you're going to add layers on top of it in order to, in some way, enhance or complicate what it communicates in a way that you think really adds to the performance of the poem, that makes its themes clearer, more resonant, that, as we've said about poetry, helps illuminate or make it have more emotional impact. So you want to think about your supplementary score in this way. So if you look at the frequently asked question replies a little bit further down, then this is where you'll see the specifications. built out more in a more itemized way. So this should be basically the checklist that you go through. So for your poem selections, then we already talked through this, but you're building on one of your recent performances, but you can only use one of the two texts from your most recent performance. So you can build on what you did before, but the idea is that you can't just say, these are my multi-text performances is what I did before, because I had blended two poems together. So I'm even fine if you want to use both of your texts from last time, but you would have to incorporate a third text or an additional text. So as long as you are re-engaging in a way that attempts to substantively build on what you've done. And again, if you are performing then something you've done before, I'm going to ask that you try to select something specific about the old performance you're aiming to enhance or improve on in using it now or building on it now in your multi-text performance. So then again, you can pick a brand new text, which is totally fine. And then, like last time, you should choose around a minute and a half of poetry. So this says, again, 12 lines here. 12 lines is just an estimate as to what a minute or a minute and a half might be. You can go above that for sure, but it should be around that from your poem. And then your supplementary score will take up the rest of your 3 to 5 minute performance. And again, the supplementary score is the other texts you are using. So whether that's written, oral, visual, or physical, or as we said, when we say oral, that could be auditory, that could be music. So you here can, again, choose from anything, from singing, from dancing, from performing with a musical instrument, to showing videos or slideshows, so whatever you think would be most engaging here. Obviously, because we're doing things digitally, this will take some experimentation on your part, but hopefully you'll find it to be a fun experiment. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you select. And obviously, if you have any questions, you can ask me about them. The really nitty-gritty breakdown of what you could choose or should choose involving your supplementary score you can find here and read for yourself. I'm not going to go through it, but so for instance, it says that you should use a minimum of 8 movements in your physical supplementary score. That is just to say that there should be a real elaborate use of physicality to express something. So these suggestions are not, I'm not going to sit there and count your movements, but make sure that whatever your supplementary score is, whatever other texts you choose, that they are substantive and you're using them in ways that you think are really valuable. So in addition to your supplementary score, so the other texts you've chosen, I'm also asking you, like you have been doing so far, to make 3 physical choices, so one more physical choice than usual, so that's gestures or full body gestures or facial expressions, 2 sound choices, so sighs, crackings of the voice, all of the things that we've talked about in terms of non-verbal vocal expressions. So those are things I'm asking you to do here, as well as 2 new items. One is a visual choice and one is a spatial choice. So a visual choice would be if, for instance, you chose to wear a costume, or you chose to wear a color you felt was symbolic, or you chose to incorporate a prop. Any of those would be a visual choice. And then a spatial choice would be perhaps you cut from being on one side of the room to another side of the room when you're engaging in conversation with yourself, or you are far away for part of the performance and then you're close for another part of the performance. Or maybe you've just positioned the camera in a way that you find significant for relating something. In terms of all of these things, this is going to be an interesting opportunity for you to experiment. And again, if you're doing things on audio, some of this might get tricky. For this performance in particular, I might recommend that you do video if at all possible, but I know that might not be possible for everybody, which is okay. And if you do an audio recording for your multitext performance, my only ask would be that you find ways to incorporate this amount or these number of artistic motions or artistic gestures to accompany your performance. So like we've talked about, narrating gestures that take place, or you could perhaps describe what costume somebody was wearing in order to make it clear that there was a physical symbol we're supposed to see. In the way that, for instance, when people do staged readings, sometimes they'll read out the scene, and maybe you want to do something like that to give us a sense of space or visual before you get into the substance of the performance. But I encourage you to be creative. And if you have any questions about adapting to this to an audio format, or about whether doing something would count as an example of the gesture, please just contact me. I would be happy to run through how this process might work if you do have to do it on audio. Again, that would be completely fine. But for people who do it on video, those are the specific requirements for you to add to your performance. So again, then you'll have the supplementary score, which is the text you've selected, and then the sub-elements of 1 visual choice, 3 physical choices, 2 sound choices, and 1 space choice or 1 spatial choice. And you should really enjoy experimenting in what it says in the handout is your studio spaces, but play with the rooms you record in. Really get into the process of saying, okay, what are the possibilities of performing from my house? How can I experimentally use my environment and my technology that I have to create this multitext performance and make it truly interesting and engaging? So please experiment. So all of these things, these guidelines, I am really looking for you to follow them relatively specifically. But if you have a question, or if you want to push a boundary, or think something would be interesting and if you're not sure if it fits, please just let me know. Okay, so those are then the main requirements. I would be happy to hear any questions you have. On the second page of the handout, like last time, there is a worksheet that will walk you through step by step all of the requirements that we just talked through. So by our workshop on Thursday, I would ask you to have this pretty much done. And for our workshops, which start on Thursday, I put you in those peer groups, and I'm going to ask you to share both these worksheets and what you have so far of your performances drafted with your peers on Thursday to see what their feedback is as well. So that's something we're going to be doing in addition to our normal meetings for these workshops, because I really want to give you the opportunity to benefit from one another's input and to work together to the extent that you can on this project. So again, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you produce here. I'm really happy with the work that you've done so far, so I really appreciate your effort and enthusiasm that you've shown so far. This has been a really fun summer course, so for me, at least, to teach, and it's been really great having conversations with you, so I'm really looking forward to these workshops and to hearing what you're cooking up. So you'll have plenty of chances to ask me questions. Again, I know that there's a little bit more involved here. The main idea is just that you're building on your first performances or selecting poems to do a new performance and using what we've talked about in reference to poetry and the performance of poetry to explore how race and gender roles get performed in life every day, what its consequences are, asking questions or interrogating those biases or those roles that we play, thinking about alternatives to those roles, just exploring the idea that race and gender are things that we perform, that are constructed in that way, is the main idea of your exploration, and that you're going to pick a poem, either the poem you've been working on or a new one, that speaks to those themes, and you're going to use another text of the kinds that we talked about and combine them in a way that you think produces a provocative and interesting engagement with those questions or with those themes that we've been discussing. So that's the multitext performance. So tune into the next video, and we're going to talk about Butler and Bornstein. So I'll talk to you in just a minute.